Imagine this. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings. This is your house. But is it your home? Hi, I'm Nelson DeMello, and join me as we try to find our home beyond our borders.
I don't know. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good take.
This is going to be the climax of this story. This is the peak. This is where we see Moses' true colors. We see the distinction of God from humanity. We see just everything come to this core tension and the release. But before I get there, I have to go through chapter 17, 18, 19, just real quick. So 17 is basically, essentially all the chiefs come. Aaron has his staff. All the leaders have their staffs. They all put it together. They write their names on it. They put it together, and I think it's an almond that buds. I don't know if that's just like what they depict in drawings or whatever, but a flower it buds. Something buds out of Aaron's staff specifically, and that marks, hey, this is the guy. It's not everyone else, it's the guy. So it's like this long journey to get to where they already were. Now that's going to be the theme for the next chapter as well, where we see that. We see this idea that God has commanded something. God has ordained. In this case, it's Aaron being the line of the priests. It is going to also be the Levites circling the God's encampment. We're going to see this again. We're going to ask ourselves, wait, why is God repeating himself as if this is something new? And I think that's the heart of the question. That's the question that we ask ourselves in this. It is kind of like a little side plot, but again, I think that's what's great about storytelling. Like, good storytelling has this overarching narrative that we're keeping track of. I mean, like any series we watch, this is what it looks like, right? You have this overarching story that's happening from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. But then there's these little episodes that happen. You're like, how does this how does this add to the story? Like, I don't, sometimes in those series we're watching and it's like, bro, go to the other storyline. Like, I want to know what's going on with this person. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what's going on right now. So it's like, what does this staff thing have to do with anything? Well, I mean, I guess it is actually following the narrative kind of well. I'm the one just, trying to over-explain something. But Moses and Aaron were catching flack in Korah's rebellion. They all died, right? We talked about that last time. And so the question is, okay, but all right, we understand, Moses, you're the guy, but does it still have to be Aaron? And God chooses Aaron here, right? And so things that stuck out to me in this chapter that kind of go into the next chapter, God's gentle response and answers to the questions in the hearts of the Israelites, following all the rebellions, and God killing all the rebels. After all of these things, Aaron is where he belongs, and now they fear and respect the Lord. So I guess in verse 10 through 12, again, ... we're just going to skim through this. So the staff of Aaron, to be kept as a sign for the rebels, that you may make an end to the grumblings against me, lest they die. The people of Israel said, behold, are we to perish? We are undone. I wrote that twice. We are undone. Everyone who comes near to the tabernacle of the Lord shall die. Are we all to perish? And so here we see that they finally have this fear and this respect for the Lord. They're not just, diabolical and disrespectful and kind of just doing their own thing. They kind of know their place now. Like, oh, this is a holy thing. If I mess with this, if I am inappropriate in how I deal with these things, there are consequences. Like, that will happen to me and I will suffer them. Like, this isn't an invisible, this isn't a fake God. This is a real God who has like real, desires and wishes, and if we go against them, we do suffer from that. But that's the thing, right? It's like God becomes real, but now they're terrified. And so it's almost like one step forward, two steps back. You know what I mean? And so that's the second, or that's the third point, is now, but now God is unapproachable. So in one sense they progress, but in another they swung in a different direction and missed the bullseye. Okay, that makes sense. I was like, swung, what? So yeah, they were irreverent towards Moses, towards Aaron, towards God. They were like, what the heck are we doing in the desert? Like, all this is stupid. There's no promise. God, yeah, whether he's real or not, who knows, whatever. But like, we're here, and what do we have to show for it? And then all of a sudden, it finally hits them after thousands of people dying from God's wrath. They're like, oh, wait a second. This coincidence that we thought was happening isn't a coincidence. And there is a God, and he can be scary. But now I'm terrified. Like, that means anything I do out of line, I'm going to die, And so that's kind of the fear that they have, right? That's like the despair. It's like, well, now we're hostage, basically. This isn't cool at all, right? It made me think of, Proverbs 1:7. I think it's repeated again in Psalms, and again in Proverbs, and it repeats itself in Psalms, which is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? I looked at the Hebrew for that because I was going to make the point that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's not the middle or the end of wisdom. Like that's your starting point, right? Which means, right, this fear has to hit you at some point for you to build on, which is that idea of building on the foundation. That is the core of what beginning, the Hebrew word for beginning here is. It's this idea that it's not like the prime. It's the chief. It's the utmost. It's the first. It's, the thing before all things. So it's so I think foundation would maybe be a better word here. So it's the foundation of wisdom. That doesn't mean, so like you can't build a house without the foundation. But the house isn't the foundation, right? So if you're just stuck, well, if you don't have the fear of the Lord at all, then you're not going to be wise. Like, and I do see that there's this, I think even in emotional maturity, there's an inkling of understanding that the world is bigger than you. There is like a hint of an implication that there is a God. You know what I mean? So like just in the most basic form of maturing as a human being, there is this sense that there is a fear of the Lord. A fear of the Lord doesn't necessarily mean being scared of God, like in this context, but it's having this like understanding of the disparity between God and us, right? I think that's the best way to define it, because that can create all kinds of emotions, right? That can create fear, that can create awe, that can create wonder, that can create all these powerful emotions and feelings, and all of that is within the fear of the Lord. So understanding the disparity between you and God, an eternal being that created everything out of his mouth, that is so expansive and so vast that he's he's not understandable entirely. That is the beginning of wisdom. That's the starting point of wisdom. So I think if you're not a Christian, that starting point of this universe is way bigger than just me. Like dying to egocentrism, right? This idea that everything revolves around me and everything's about me, and this person cut me off because he's jealous, or this person cut me, like they're living their own lives. This universe is bigger, right? This guy didn't have breakfast this morning. The guy, is going through a breakup, or he's late to work, and it has nothing to do with something emotionally wrong with him. Some people just drive that way. You know what I mean? Like the universe is so much bigger than just you. So just in that hint of the idea that God is real and the fear of that, like the understanding, the depth of, oh my gosh, like it's not about me at all. Like I'm not even a side character. Like the narrative could be like in Asia right now, and I'm just like existing. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Like that's the beginning of wisdom. Now, there's a pastor who emphasizes it, and I think it's important. Like we all, every pastor, especially if they have like a voice and a message and, a platform to speak on, I think God is using people to give one message, but he has 100 messages to give. You know what I mean? So like, I can't discount, wow, this pastor's talking about the fear of the Lord like it's the end all be all. And maybe he feels like it's the end all be all. And that's exactly what God intends in his life for this season, so that people can be passionate about the fear of the Lord. Now, we look at the Bible holistically. It's not the end all be all, but it's a very important thing that this generation might have forgotten. And honestly, it can be a cure to a lot of things in our lives, right? Understanding. So why it's the beginning of wisdom, understanding that vast difference, right? Not the vast deference, that's something else. But the vast difference between me and God, right? I'm finite, I'm small, I'm insignificant, and you have the God of the universe, creates everything, knowing his care, and then putting his character on top of that, right? Loving, gracious, merciful, just, right? And then putting on top of that he is with us, that he is humble, a humble God that came down, and he's with us. And then adding on top of that he's for us. Like, what does that do to our relationship to ourselves? What does that do to our relationship with other people? Do you see how it's a trickle down effect? How we see God affects how we see people and ourselves and our lives and all these things, right? And so with that in mind, when you really, really understand, and I mean understand in the sense like this is de facto like what it is, that God is all powerful, but he also cares about my life, and he is sovereign over my life. And then any kind of wave that crashes against our house, it's on a firm foundation. I'm not tripping. I'm going to get upset because grief happens, but I'm never going to be in despair. And that's like one of my favorite verses is the whole, like, you get knocked down, but you're not destroyed. We can be dismayed, but never in despair. Like, things are going to happen in our lives, and that's going to suck, but it's not the end all. Like, that's not the end of our lives. That's not it. Because we have this anchor, we have this hope, we have like a stability that is otherworldly. So that's just one aspect. I mean, I can think of our self-esteem, right? If that person loves us unconditionally, then like, who cares if your dad thinks you're dumb? You know what I mean? Like, there's just, I hope I can get, like, let's say you're a musician and like you idolized Michael Jackson, right? And let's say, well, maybe he's a bad example. Let's say you're a rapper and you idolize Kendrick Lamar, right? And you're doing your rap thing, and all your friends are like, "Bro, you bugging, you suck," and da 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 da. But then somehow, right, you're rapping, and Kendrick hears you, and he's like, "Bro, keep going. I see greatness in you. You're so good." Like, who cares if nobody's like your friends, like, thinks you're whack? Like the guy of this century is like, "No, you got it, bro. Just keep going." You know what I mean? Like, it's like, bro, if Kendrick told me that is something, nobody can tell me nothing, you know? Now imagine God beyond that level calling you and saying, no, I made you. Like, I made you with the challenges that you have. I made you with the strengths that you have. And I want you to carry yourself with dignity through this world because I made you that way. I made you intentionally. I made you with purpose, right? That changes how you walk. That changes how you talk. That changes how you interact with people. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but you build on top of that with God's character and, you know, all these things. So yeah, that I was supposed to quickly go through that, but regardless, having the fear and then thinking that he's against you, that's game over, right? Like this is where this is why I harp on, like, your theology is probably the most important thing that you have to get right. Now, again, in this context, I can use the word theology, but what I really mean is how you see God is the most important thing that you need to figure out in your life. Like, who God is, getting that right. Why? Because we see this example of them fearing for their lives. Now, till now, God has been protecting, providing all of these things. And all of a sudden, it hits them. Oh my gosh, this is an all-powerful God that does all things, that can do all things. I'm terrified. It's like, whoa, wait. He's for you. You know, you have to be for yourself. If you're against yourself, God is going to be against you, you know? So, but that doesn't click yet. That doesn't register. It's not clocking. It's not getting... Sorry, that meme is great. The way he delivers that. Okay, no, but do you know what I mean? And so we can do the same thing. Often, we are projecting who our parents are to God, right? I've used my life as an example. I've gone from two like very polar ideas rooted in the same thing. I went from a deist, so God created everything. He kind of abandoned creation. He's not really there, but he's like watching from a distance, right? I guess I should explain the context of my childhood. My dad was basically always working. You know, if he wasn't working, he was sleeping, and that's just what he did. We are actually talking about it like last week or something, of like, dude, if I had the mental health that I had today, back then, like he's just dumbfounded of like how he possibly could live like that and not like hate his life. You know what I mean? It was like 12-hour days. He would sleep, wake up, 12-hour days, sleep, wake up, and then serve like faithfully in church. He'd be there twice a week, you know, and it's just every week. He did that for decades. You know what I mean? And it's like, so I didn't see my dad. Other people saw my dad more than I did, right? And that translates. So the distance that we had, I was like, oh, well, God's that way, right? God is this distant person. That couldn't be further from the truth. And the Bible explicitly is against that, right? Jesus is named Emmanuel, God with us, right? He's here. He's present. He is walking. He walked with us. He suffered with us. He did all these things, rejected by us, dies for us, and now he lives in us as the Holy Spirit. And that's who God is, right? So it's like not there. And then the other end was the validation I didn't get from my dad from being away. I thought, oh, God loves me so unconditionally. I can do whatever I want, and that's okay. And And yeah, so you know, there's just this projection of like whatever I'm either God is just like my dad, my mom, or God isn't like my mom and dad. Therefore, he's the opposite. So, you know, my dad was strict and absent. And so God was absent. And I was like, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. So then he's so present. He is so super present. But then he's like the opposite of strict, and he was like okay with everything. He just wanted to be in my life and love me and da da da. That there was a lot of backfiring there, right? I had to learn the wisdom, the long story of learning to obey and what that looks like and all that. Right. Okay. My point being, the way you see God can determine how your life goes, can determine how your relationships go, can determine how you see yourself. It determines everything. So that's what we got to get right. And that's what I mean if I ever say we got to get our theology right. Because the right faith leads to the right beliefs, and the right beliefs lead to the right actions, and that's just the flow of our lives. So yeah, I'm very adamant about getting it right. Cool. So we see a dysfunction in their view of God. They just now have the fear of the Lord. They see the chasm between him, between God and them, but they don't know his character. Like we haven't been shown this whole time, right? We should get this far ahead in the story and be like, dude, what are you guys doing? This is silly, bro. But his response is beautiful. So we're in chapter 18, verse 5. It says, "And you shall keep guard over the sanctuary and over the altar, and that there may never again be wrath on the people of Israel." Now, you read that, I read that, and you're thinking, well, I don't know, man, because, they get chased out of, like, with Babylon, Romans take over, like, all of these things happen. What do you mean? And then some people could say that God wouldn't directly, bring another plague and da 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 da. I would make the case in the context of 18, he's talking about if you keep the boundary, then it's a very simple, hey, don't cross the boundary and you won't die, And if you don't do that, then that won't ever be an issue. I think it's simpler than we might want to make it for this verse specifically. Now, again, what's interesting here is God has already commanded that, right? Like Numbers 2, I think, when we talked about like the shape of some people on the north, some people on the west, some people on the east, some people on the south, and the Levites in the middle protecting everyone else from getting too close to the tabernacle. That's already been established. So why is he doing it now? It's out of this kindness. It's out of this remembrance. It's out of, like, his words are soft, right? It's like, dude, I'm terrified of you. And it's like, yo, you don't have to be terrified. Like, just do this and we won't have problems. And they're like, okay, cool. Going back to the seeming contradiction, it's a conditional statement. And essentially this is what God is saying. If you protect the tabernacle, I won't kill people for abusing it, which is like, duh, right? And yeah, I mean, it might be, but that's exactly what's going on here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, for 18, there is this weird thing that happens where even the Levites tithe. So basically Israel keeps 90%, tithes 10, right? And then the Levites keep, out of the total thing, 9%, tithes 1, and God holds on, truly has 1%, because the 10% goes to the Levites. 10% of the Levites goes to God itself, which I don't know if that just means it goes back like into the tabernacle. I don't know, bro, but that's what that is, right? Chapter 19. The only thing that really sticks out to me is the red heifer. There's this weird thing about the red heifer. I heard this rumor kind of deal with Jews think if you bring 7 perfect red heifers and sacrifice them at some altar, that the Messiah will come. But that's like a very tangential line of thinking, and very few, you know what I mean? Like that's not a common belief at all. It's like a conspiracy theory level in terms of like how many people believe, all that. The instructions for killing the red heifer also remind me of Jesus's sacrifice, because it's like outside the camp and all that. So yeah, there's that. Wait, hold up. If at any point in this you said, dang, I never thought about it like that, please subscribe. What are you doing, man? I'm trying to pay my bills. Okay, anyways, let's get back to the serious stuff. All right, see it. Okay, we're finally chapter 20. This is where it goes down, okay? This is absolutely where it goes down. I had to spend time with this because I was confused. This is the waters of Meribah story, right? It starts verse 7, I think. Let me read it. Oh, yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So, I mean, verse 2 to 6, the people are complaining like they always complain. It's like, oh, can we go back to Egypt and be slaves again? Because that was better and da-da-da, right? And this time it was because they didn't have water or something. Not or something. There's no water. And so then, verse 7, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron, your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them, and give drink to the congregation and their cattle. And Moses took the staff from before the Lord, and as he commanded him. Then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, so far so good. Let's really pay attention here, okay? So it says, hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hands and struck the rock with his staff twice. And water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their livestock. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe in me to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land I have given them. These are the waters of Meribah, where the people of Israel quarreled with the Lord, and through them he showed himself holy. All right? Let's keep that in mind. The part about because you did not believe in me sticks out to me. The part of here he sets himself holy sticks out to me. Like, why? What does this have to do with being holy? Let's start with what went wrong, right? There's a lot of theories on this. People, I'm gonna say them all and then just maybe bring them together. But essentially, we have, I don't even know if these likelihood ratings are legit. I asked ChatGPT to synthesize like a likelihood rating for all of these. I have my problems with ChatGPT. It's self-affirming, it's really like, oh, you're the best and you're the smartest. So I don't know if it like has kind of kept a record of how I think and like what my opinion would be. And then even though I asked it to be like, oh, strictly textual criticism and, whatever, I gave it a rubric. I don't know if it followed the rubric, you know what I mean? But here we go. So, disobeyed a direct command, was told to speak, but struck it twice. So this is verse 8 and verse 11, right? So again, verse 8, it says, take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and your brother Aaron, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. Okay. Again, we talked about this in Exodus, why it was important for Moses here to speak. In Exodus, or was it Leviticus? Either way, we saw that it was like in that verse, because this happened twice. The water coming out of rock came out twice. The first time, he says, I will go before the rock and you will strike me and water will come out. This is supposed to be a foreshadow of Jesus. And then he was supposed to speak to the rock as a foreshadow of Jesus' second coming. The trumpet's blowing and he arrives, right? This was supposed to be the analogy here. He strikes the rock twice. He disobeys, right? So that's one thing. And yeah, we'll get there. I was gonna say, like, why did the miracle happen anyways, even though he disobeyed? That's another question. We'll get there. Okay, the second thing is that Moses spoke pridefully and took God's credit, right? He said, "Shall we bring out water?" Where in Exodus 17:6, God says, "I will stand before you on the rock." I guess that's irrelevant to this specific passage, but again, is this idea of, like, am I gonna do it? Like, do I have to do everything? Right? This almost confirms a little bit the narrative that we're seeing. Like we talked about last time, this idea of, like, who's God, who's Moses, where's the line there, and what's going on there. And for him to say, "Shall we bring out water?" In this point of the story, God has affirmed that he wants Moses and affirmed that he wants Aaron. So these two are valid. They're validated by God, right? And now they're saying, "Shall we bring out the water?" Like, that's a little arrogant, right? Like, you see the difference in language. Like, bro, you said, "Hey, if God does this, then I am of God," or God says this, and da. And now he's saying, "Shall we bring out water?" And he hits the rock. So he does his own thing, right? So the first one was 85%. The second one is 75%. This is 70% likelihood. Moses acted out of anger and not faith. "Listen, you rebels," right? Striking the thing twice. You see this also, in verse 10. Psalms 106, 32, 33. Not quite sure what it says at this moment, but at the time, go read it. It's probably relevant. It probably talks about Moses striking the rock. And essentially, the idea here is that he's burnt out of being the leader. He's like over it. He's over these people complaining. He's so done with everyone. And so he's angry. And that anger and that bitterness affected how he related with God, how he related with the people. And in that sense, like, there is a loss, a misdirection of your faith. Like, not a misdirection of your faith, I'm sorry. It's a non-focus on your faith. Like, you have, like, if this right here, if this point, I'm sorry, if you're looking straight ahead, I think this is a perfect example. Peter walking on water. He looked away. As soon as he looked away, he started sinking. In the same sense here, when Moses looked away from God for a moment because of his bitterness, his anger, his being burnt out, whatever the case is, he's doing ministry wrong. He is doing his calling. What does Darius Daniel call it? His mission, I think, is what he calls it. He's doing his mission wrong because he took his eyes off of God. That sentence, I think, brings everything all together. I don't think any other... Yeah. So there's the idea that Moses repeated an earlier miracle, diminishing the need for faith, striking the rock again, repeats the old sign of faith. You did not believe, right? But what we see is a man that is burnt out, and we see God having mercy with him. Why having mercy? Well, he had mercy on the people because even though the leader, again, took his eyes off of God for that one moment, again, we're getting to a point, like, you have to understand how disappointing this actually is. You have a man that people could not separate, God and Moses. Like, whatever Moses said, it was because God said. Everything that came out of his mouth, everything he did, everything he thought, everything he was God. And this moment, you see a split, a diversion, a distinction, a separation of. This goes into that last line of the verse that I was reading. Here he made himself holy. God made himself set apart from even Moses. This is why not only because I'm Christian, but why I've been pointing to Jesus throughout all of this, but why Jesus is God. Like, it's one thing to try to mimic and look like God, but that is not sustainable because you are not God. You are going to fail. Moses here failed. He was the closest human being, fully human, not divine, to look like God. Here we see his failure. Now, it's not this humongous moral failure and blah, 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 but it's a distinction from divine. Jesus dies with no distinction from divine. That right now is the fuel of my argument for why Jesus is God. Like, we can look at all the miracles, we can look at all the, we can look at everything, right? His authority, all of that, right? And we can debate back and forth. But for me to say, he sounded like God, he looked like God, he acted like God, he thought like God, he had God's authority, he had God, you know what I mean? Like, he was God from birth to death. You can't, like, there is no separation in will, in action, in motive, in nothing. Like, like, if it smells like chocolate and it tastes like chocolate, it's probably chocolate. And if Jesus sounds like God, acts like God, talks like God, he just might be God. So that's my argument for Jesus. I'm getting ahead of myself, I think. Or maybe I'm not getting ahead of myself, but let's dial it back. Moses failing at this moment, right? I brought all the reasons. We bring it all together and we see that he just, his burnout, every internal mechanism that makes him human failed him in this one moment. He turned his eyes from God for one moment. And this is why, like in verse 12, it says, "And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because you do not believe in me, to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, you shall not bring the assembly into the land I have given them." Right? You did not believe in me. What did Jesus say when Peter sank? He said the same thing. Why do you have little faith? Right? So it's this thing. He lost his faith. He lost his convictions. He lost, for a moment, he was too attached to the reality of this world. What I mean by that is, like, the pressing thing in his life was the people complaining for once in his life, right? We look at all the other times and there's just this, like, otherworldliness about him. Like, oh, these people are complaining. Let me go to the spiritual plane. Like, he lived in the spiritual plane. He lived with, like, God, communicating with God, speaking with God. And for this one moment, he was sucked down to earth, right? Now, I'm not making the argument that what Christianity looks like, what religiosity looks like, is this, esoteric, thing. It's not what I'm saying. But there's this mind frame, there's this perspective on life when, again, the fear of the Lord and all that, right? With solid theology and really grounded belief in all of that, life becomes small, But for this one moment, it was big. And he reacted in a very human way. Like, I don't hate him for it. I don't even judge the guy. Like, for some people, he might not have even done anything wrong. You know what I mean? And that's my point with Numbers also talking about morality. Do you honestly think hitting a rock twice for water to come out is a sin? not if you're thinking of ethics and morality, right? And if you're in that in between of like, oh, but obedience and disobedience is, I would say, you're almost there. It really is about upholding faith, keeping God where God is at all times, and having your eyes centered on that. Anytime you deviate, your actions commit sin, your heart commits sin, your mind commits sin. And that is impossible to uphold at all times, right? This is why we need grace. Like this is the Sermon of the Mount. Like that's, I want to talk about, like, if you are Jewish, or like, let's say we're not at the we're not at the New Testament yet. We don't have Jesus. We don't have anything. You read this story, I think a little bit of despair hits you. Like if you really settle with the understanding of this story, if you really understand like what's going on in this story, like I'm trying to push you in that direction. Like if you understand the depth of really what's wrong here in this chapter, it should be a little hopeless. Like, man, not even my boy Moses made it. Like not even he was perfect. Like, who's going to save us? Like he's not the perfect intercessor. He just messed up. Who then? Who? Like that's Hosanna. You know what I mean? That's the cry of Hosanna. And yeah. So that yeah. I mean, oh man. Yeah, like I'm getting goosebumps down my legs, down my arms. Like when we then go to the New Testament, and Jesus is walking down. He's riding through the gates of Jerusalem on a donkey, and they're calling, Hosanna, Hosanna, save us. This, like, that's it. Like, that's our need for a savior. Like, who's going to intercede for us? Like, if Moses couldn't do that, if Moses couldn't be that guy, who? And it's Jesus. It's the man that was God from birth to death. Like, it's inseparable. Like, it's indistinctive. Like, this is Jesus. And I thought this was going to be a two-parter. I didn't think I was going to get through that, but that's it, man. That doesn't summarize this story. There's still a bit, but like in terms of, like, again, we're at the climax. Like this is the point where things go downhill kind of deal. You know what I mean? Not that it's downhill. Like this is the point that flips to our resolution. Now, again, I'm going through this with you in terms of, like, I'm not that far ahead. I'm just a few chapters ahead. I haven't gotten to the end. I don't know what the resolution looks like. So I can't offer that kind of hope, but I can tell you that the man who the Jews were waiting for, the perfect intercessor. Like this is why Hebrews is so relevant and so theologically deep in all these things, because whoever wrote Hebrews had a extensive knowledge. Like maybe had, like, I don't know, like I'm very, very speculating here, but he probably had all of Numbers. He probably had, like, because scrolls are expensive, and like to have, full text like this, I don't know who this guy is, maybe some kind of old rabbi or whatever. Like that's why they say it's Paul, because like he would have this knowledge, but he also didn't quote Old Testament like that. You know what I mean? So it had to be somebody else. Maybe. I don't know. I'm okay. I mean, hey, look, this is the the Bible, the Bible study, the BS aspect of it. Like I don't know who wrote it. I'm not convinced of anything. I like the idea that Hebrews was written by a second generational Christian, because that gives like a little more weight to secondhand like godly literature and song and all these things, like, but I think, like, I'm extending this. I think that's it. I don't know. Let me double check though. For this, I think we're done here. Oh man, no, we'll do 21. We gotta do chapter 21, bro. So again, this is the story of the bronze serpent, and there. I'm sorry. This is like, it's just too perfect, man. It's literally pointing to Jesus. It's pointing. Oh my God. Like, I don't have to do the legwork of pointing it to Jesus. It does it on its own. Like, it's so there. It's like, you got to be clueless to not see it. No offense to everyone who doesn't see it, but I'm also like, get a grip on yourself. I'll start at verse 4. From Mount Hor, they set out by the way of the Red Sea to go around the land of Edom. And the people became impatient on the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses, saying, why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no food, there is no water, and we loathe this worthless food. So right there already, right? There's no food, no water, right? Water's a mirror, but it just happened. Bro, we can literally find water from rocks. Like, what are you complaining about right now? And there's no food. And then they say, we loathe the food, this is worthless. There is no food, but there is food, we just hate it. Well, is there food or is there not? And look, I get it. Like, maybe that does do something for quality of life in a sense. But like, again, dude, we go over and over and over this. Like, just ask, but ask in faith and ask, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Okay. Then the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, so that many people of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he take away the serpents from us. So Moses prayed to the people for the people. And the Lord said to Moses, make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole. And everyone who is bitten, when he sees it, shall live. And so Moses made a bronze serpent and set it on a pole. And if a serpent bit anyone, he would look at the bronze serpent and live. Cool. Why is that crazy? Well, one, this is almost idol worship. Like, can we look at it that way? Can we look at it in what it is? Moses makes a statue, and if they look to it, maybe, look, we can get very, very technical, get into the semantics and be like, they weren't worshiping it or da-da-da. But their salvation for this pestilence was hinged upon. That's not right. It had everything to do with looking at the serpent. The serpent was his savior. It's kind of crazy. Jesus makes the reference as clear as day. Right, he says, so is the serpent that was, put on the rod, so must I be put on a rod and, be hung, and anyone who looks at me will be saved. Like he makes that analogy. He makes the analogy, it's there, and it's a one-to-one analogy. But what we have to see here is that looking at something in hopes of salvation is idolatry. You know what I mean? And that was God's command. Now, if I was Moses, I'd be like, no, I'm not hearing God right. Like the antenna's off. I know I messed up at the waters of Meribah, but like, come on, bro. You can't, like, you got to give me something. And God's like, nah, man, for real, make it. And he's like, look,
I messed up once, and I think The Chosen gets it perfectly right. Like I love the little cold open. It's not really a cold open. It was freaking crazy, but there's that foreshadow, right? And it shows Moses making the bronze serpent, and he's like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" He's like, "Bro, I disobeyed God once. I'm not gonna do it again." And so he made the bronze serpent, and everyone was healed. Right? So there is this idea that something other godly, because again, no idols, like no forming idols, no making idols. Like those are two laws, right? Not to make idols and not to worship other idols. And we've talked about that. You can make a statue of God. Like you can say, this is Yahweh. This is Adonai. That's not Adonai. That is your projection of Adonai. And that's kind of what we talked about, earlier today. And I've brought this up, and I'll continue to bring this up, habitually. This idea that we can make a projection of Adonai and think that is God. That's not God, bro. God is himself. So making a statue is a sin, and then worshiping other gods is also a sin. So we have this weird conundrum, this weird thing that's going on, where we make a statue, and this statue heals us. I don't know, my boy. I don't know. So yeah, that's the situation they were in, and it worked out. And this is, Jesus, God saying, this is faith in me is to believe in the serpent to heal you. I think that even is a kind of argument for Jesus. Like that it's okay that Jesus is God, and for him to worship a creation, to worship something that is creation as divine. I'm butchering this. This sounds really bad. And you know what? I'm going to clip it. I'm going to put it on, and I'm going to rage bait everyone. Yeah, Moses made I don't know how to. Oh man, dude, this podcast was so good. Now I'm like but essentially Moses makes a serpent. He crafts an idol, and salvation is contingent upon looking onto it. So there is a faith that looking at this statue will heal you and save you. This creates the precedent for worshiping and believing in Jesus. And he says so himself. Now that is all I got, because I'm definitely going to take my sweet time with Balaam and Balak, because that is the most theologically confusing narrative that will ever exist, to be honest. I mean, the Bible's done, right? But so it's not that will ever exist. That exists. Present tense. It's a doozy. A very doozy. So thank you guys. See ya. All right.
Hey guys, thank you so much for going on this journey with me. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, follow, and remember, there is more to life, and that is good news. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.